when we find out what's happening in the SEC, and nobody better to welcome here than the Grifter. Mike Griffith joining us. Well, Mike, great to see you. I no longer have questions for this segment. I just kind of throw the ball to you and go out and get some coffee.
Well, I mean, the question is, how much of a number one is Georgia football? And you're going to find that out on Saturday when they play at Auburn. Auburn is, I know what the record says this year. I know what last week's final score said, but you're going to Jordan-Hare Stadium, and you take a look at the all-time wins and losses and winning percentage, and this is the second hardest stadium in the SEC to win at, only behind Bryant-Denny Stadium. Obviously, I covered Auburn in the 1990s. I was there when Terry Bowden and the Auburn Tigers had a 20-game streak there that now Georgia has matched with 20 consecutive wins going into this game against the Tigers, trying to find out how Carson Beck, first-year starter, how does he respond in his first road game against a team in Auburn that, may not have the players. It's not like Hugh Freeze can pick up the phone and call in great players in 1 year. It's going to take time for them to recruit, but this is a team that I thought battled Texas A&M really hard into the third quarter, and a team that can run the ball pretty well. So this is an interesting matchup where I'm going to get a lot of questions answered about the Georgia Bulldogs.
Already questions here, and I didn't know how to answer the gentleman, so I'll ask you. He's not happy with Mike Bobo. The caller is. So what's going on there?
Well, he should probably take a look at Mike Bobo's supporting cast this year versus what Georgia had last year. I mean, it's not fair to compare Stetson Bennett to Carson Beck when they were working with different receivers and running backs. I mean, we can go down the list, Paul. I mean, Kenny McIntosh was over 1,000 total yards, didn't drop a pass, caught everything out of the backfield, great open field runner. Darnell Washington was the Shaquille O'Neal of tight ends, 6'8" and 270 pounds. He could cave in one side of the line. Very difficult matchup. Adonai Mitchell, he's now at Texas catching touchdown passes, explosive X receiver. And Ladd McConkey, Georgia's best wide receiver last year, hasn't played this year. And, oh, by the way, you had a first-round left tackle in Broderick Jones. So this year's supporting cast does not equal last year's for Carson Beck. And we'll find out if Ladd McConkey comes back, Paul. I think Ladd is probably the most important of the injured players, and it has been a laundry list. It's been the most injured team of Kirby's tenure. I think you may see Ladd in some certain packages, perhaps if the back injury holds up, and that would certainly bring a different dynamic and give Carson Beck one more great option to go to.
Talking to Mike Griffith, Mike, let's journey around the SEC. What other than the Dogs, the team you cover, you also cover the SEC. What struck you this week? What's burning in your mind?
Well, I mean, Florida's got a chance to make history, and anytime we're talking about the Florida Gators in history, everyone's ears perk up because there's a rich history. In fact, you were part of a documentary. The Swamp Thing documentary, is that was right?
That's correct. About the
by Netflix. 08. Yeah, Swamp Kings. It was really good. Oh, Swamp Kings. So they won 22 games in a row, and Georgia's chasing that. Well, now they have a chance to make a different sort of history because Florida hasn't lost 3 times in a row to Kentucky since Paul Bear Bryant was head coach in 1951. In fact, you've got to go back to 1976, I think, when Kentucky had won back-to-back, which they've done going into this game. And I thought, oh, my goodness, Florida going to Kentucky for a noon kickoff. This is, what if they lose it? And I actually looked this up because I didn't normally look at the Florida game notes. Paul, do you realize that Florida has not beaten an SEC East opponent outside of Ben Hill Griffin Stadium since the COVID year? They've lost 7 in a row against SEC East teams outside of their home stadium. This is remarkable. I don't remember. So when people say, well, why are you picking? I'm not picking on them. This is, dog bites man, not news. Man bites dog, news. And for Florida to be this sort of a loser, this is news because this was a very rich and celebrated program that all of us enjoy. We all have fond memories of Florida, Paul, whether it's trips to Walt Disney World or the beach or the wonderful sunshine. But what's happened here with this nuclear winter for Florida football, this is a big game. And Mark Stoops, by the way, this is a big game for him too. I mean, he's already passed Paul Bear Bryant in wins there. Big season. He is the longest tenured FBS Power 5 coach to have never won his division. So Mark Stoops also trying to do something this season, and he's got to get by the Gators first, and then he'll have an opportunity to roll into Sanford the following week.
Yeah, but I mean, you act like all is lost for the Gators. That the ones I talked to, and I'll see some more tomorrow, they seem pretty happy with the big win over Tennessee. There's momentum. The recruiting trail is looking good. There's a big quarterback in the pipeline. The only thing they're puzzled by, Mike, is your appearances here on Thursday afternoon.
Yeah. Well, they're right, Paul, and I actually did some thinking, and they're right. Billy Napier is a really good person, and I kind of took him to task for maybe not being a little bit more motivational and fiery, and I want to take a step back from that because I was being hypocritical. I think you have to look at the person, and Billy's a guy that does his best, and I think this is a really good human being and a good person who tries to do everything the right way, and I really applaud his efforts. And so, I'm with the Florida fans. It's important that you have a good person coaching your team with very genuine interest and goes about things the right way. So I fully support that. I know the rest of the league really supports Billy Napier, and I'm sure they'll be fine as long as he's there. I think everyone will support that because he is a very good person, Paul.
What else matters? I watched Hugh Freeze the other day. He was talking about love, and I just think the commentators on this network need to start.
Well, football's the language of love at Auburn, I guess. I don't know. It's Hugh Freeze. I'll just leave it at that. But we will say that he is a coach that is very well respected by Kirby Smart. And I speak Kirby, right? Like, you got to speak Kirby. You got to really listen hard between the lines. And when Kirby said that he respects everybody, right? First of all, he respects every opponent. Kirby's got some old school in him, and that's just how he goes about it. There's an inherent respect for the game and therefore the opponent. But when he said Hugh has answers, right? And Kirby would know because Hugh has beat a Kirby Smart coach team before. And so Kirby knows of what he speaks. Now, he probably also knows that Hugh may not have enough players yet to beat the Georgia Bulldogs. But he does have the scheme, and he does have the coaching know-how, and he does have the staff. There are some very important, vital pieces in place. Of course, we've seen, Auburn has a propensity to blow up a lot of coaches that have done quite well. I mean, Terry Bowden with the 20 wins, an undefeated season. And what do they say about him? And my goodness, Tommy Tuberville, he had an undefeated season too. And he's, my goodness, he's had to go all the way down into politics now, right?
Tuberville's last game was a 38-0 loss to Alabama. Let's not get carried away here.
My point is they have had good coaches do good things before. I mean, Gene Chizik and obviously Coach, some of his finest work was on this network, by the way. I really enjoyed his breakdowns. I was selfishly sad to see him go back into coaching because he did such a tremendous job on the SEC network. But my point is Auburn has had very good coaches before. But I think it takes a little bit more than just good coaches. Now, I did see, and I'm really excited that I'm going to get to see this, that the 1983 Auburn team is going to be honored. And Pat Dye, to me, was a fantastic coach. And not only that, Pat Dye moved mountains with his ability to get the Alabama-Auburn game back on the Auburn campus. And that meant so much to the community. It meant so much to the Auburn Tigers. And I'm going to tell you, I think Kirby Smart really looks up to Pat Dye. I know there was a mutual respect there. I had a chance to talk to Coach Dye before he passed. And he was a big proponent of Georgia getting that Florida game back in Athens when it's their year. And Pat Dye played at Georgia. So the Kirby Smart, Pat Dye, the respect level, and the fact that Georgia's going to be there when they honor Coach Dye, this is one of those really cool SEC Saturdays.
Speaking of cool, perhaps the biggest game of the weekend is in Oxford. Lane Kiffin has been noticeably quiet on Twitter this weekend. Your takeaway from Lane last week?
I'm consulting my notes. I confess I had to write this down because I didn't believe it. This may be the most damning note of Lane Kiffin yet, and that says quite a bit if you know Lane Kiffin very well. Lane Kiffin 1-19. Okay, you ready for this stat? 1-19 against Power 5 teams that finish with 9 wins. He's won one game in his 12-year head coaching career over a Power 5 team that finished a season with 9 wins. And what does that tell you? And that was back in 2011, Oregon. I don't even know who's coaching that. Back in 2011, 12 years. So it was certainly Alabama. We know they're going to win. How big was it, Paul? Look, we were all front and I was guilty as anyone. I said, oh my gosh, look at this. Is this the end? And Nick Saban, is Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin going to take them down? Lane is trying to hype this game. He's doing all of his Twitter tricks with the dog on Twitter and all his comedy and propping this game up. And he can't wait and all the Ole Miss players think they've got Bama right where they want them. And what did Saban do with those halftime adjustments? The Crimson Tide absolutely slammed the door in Lane's face and said, not this time, Lane. You're not ready. Go back to Oxford where you don't beat anybody that's relevant. And so Nick Saban is still front and center. Bama is still the favorite in the West. It reminds me, like I said, of that number 3 car and the great Dale Earnhardt. It drives on. It's still in everybody's rearview mirror. It's clouding everyone's afraid of Nick Saban. It's not over yet, Paul. Nick Saban made a stand in Tuscaloosa. That was a really big win.
So what does this game mean for Lane Kiffin against Brian Kelly Saturday night?
Is anybody watching? Is anybody paying? Are they doing something fun at the stadium? I guess they're going to do. That's great. I mean, it's going to be pretty. Okay. What does that mean? I guess if you think that if you believe that LSU is going to win 9 games this year, then Lane's got a chance to win a game of significance. Otherwise, it's just another year. And everybody's, let's be clear, everybody's happy about this. You know, Ole Miss can win. It's kind of like Kentucky. It's kind of the Kentucky of the way. Just go win 8 or 9 games and don't make a scene. All right. And everybody's just, let's just go on with it. 8 or 9 win team. LSU's trying to get something done. And I will say, I was a little surprised to see Sam Pittman and the Hogs take LSU that deep under the feared Tiger Stadium. Oh my gosh, so scary that you needed a field goal to beat a 500 Arkansas team. I mean, I'm a little wondering if LSU's a little suspect. And, you know, I champion Brian Kelly. I've championed that hire, and Notre Dame's winningest coach. You know, I guess all you got to be able to do up there is put 11 guys on the field to win games, and Brian Kelly does that. But so let's see what happens with LSU and Ole Miss. Let's see if LSU continues to march towards Tuscaloosa, towards what looks to be the showdown for the SEC West. Not going to count on A&M yet. You know, there was a kid there by the name of Max Johnson now that's playing quarterback from A&M, and he played his high school football less than a mile from where I'm standing. He's a pretty good quarterback, and I think A&M is a team to watch, and I think Alabama's got to travel there. So there's still a little drama out there in the West Division, and I think if LSU can beat Ole Miss, they'll continue their march, and we'll see if A&M can take care of business. And certainly Alabama, I think they've won 15 in a row in Starkville. I think they'll probably silence those cowbells early.
The Grifter joining us here on Thursday afternoon. We will see you next week. We might actually see you next week. We'll take a short break. Be back right after this.